Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Thank you for watching. In today's video, we're gonna do a quick video about what happened with Obama speaking on the passing of Charlie Kirk and other video. Let's check it out, and we'll see. And again, in a close down a Jimmy Kimmel show.
We have breaking news. ABC has just announced here that they will be preempting the very well-known show Jimmy Kimmel Live indefinitely. That
I could say objectives like, go grab the latest stock price of NVIDIA, then look back 5 years and find the total return on investment, including stock splits and dividends. And after a few seconds, we can see this really well formatted and thought out report on the return on investment for NVIDIA.
Former President Barack Obama speaking out about political violence in the wake of the murder of Charlie Kirk and pleading for leaders to lead, saying, quote, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, what happened to Charlie Kirk was horrific and a tragedy. The former president also raised concerns over the escalating threat of more violence.
We are certainly at an inflection point, not just around political violence, but there are a host of larger trends that we have to be concerned about. I think it is important for us at the outset to acknowledge that political violence is not new. It has happened at certain periods in our history. But it is something that it is anathema to what it means to be a democratic country.
Joining me right now to discuss is the Democratic Governor of Kentucky, Governor Andy Beshear. Governor, thank you for being here. And as we look kind of on this question of leaders leading in the face of this rhetoric and this horrible tragedy, you are a Democrat who was won twice in a state that Donald Trump won by 30 points in the last election. You know what crossing party lines look like, navigating tough stuff between people of very different beliefs, what is needed. What is your assessment of how President Trump is navigating this?
Well, I think right now leaders have a choice. to condemn political violence and all violence against anyone at any time, full stop, period, or to only condemn violence against people that look like them, sound like them, or believe like they do. And President Trump right now is missing the mark. Now is the chance to unify the country, to put our humanity above our political parties, to make sure that we are saying very loud and clear that violence against any human being is wrong, and to remind every American that we are all each other's neighbors, and what binds us, what makes us united is much more important than the disagreements we may have that should never escalate to something like we saw last week.
Governor, one thing that many Republican politicians are pointing to is a recent poll as evidence that it is more a left problem. A YouGov poll that showed that Democrats were more likely than Republicans to say it's acceptable to celebrate the death of a public figure. 11% of Democrats saying always or usually acceptable to celebrate a death of a public figure, compared to 6% of Republicans, though, I mean, it deserves saying that 9% of Americans said it was acceptable, while 78% in this poll said it was unacceptable, just so we can keep it all in perspective here. But this is what I know many Republicans are pointing to, is this is saying this is a more left problem than it is a right problem. What do you do with that?
Again, they have the option to condemn violence, full stop, period, or try to create more of an us versus them that only makes this country boil that much hotter. Now is the chance to have the opportunity for all of the American people to see that leaders believe that murder is not partisan. It is just wrong. And when I think about all of the instances of violence we've seen against political figures, you have the murder of Charlie Kirk, you have the murder of the former Speaker of the House of Minnesota, you have the firebombing of Pennsylvania governor's mansion while Josh Shapiro was there, the plan to kill Gretchen Whitmer, the mayor of Louisville during his campaign 3 years ago was shot at in his office. This occurs across the political spectrum. And the moment that we try to use it for politics is the moment we lose the chance to declare our humanity and to call on people to be.
Also happening today, Governor, the former CDC director who was pushed out last month is testifying on Capitol Hill and expected to lay out that she was fired, she says, for holding the line on scientific integrity and point to RFK Jr. as being the problem, that trying to force her to rubber stamp vaccine recommendations for a panel that he's stacked with vaccine skeptics before she even seen the science. As a governor, how important is the CDC to public health in your state? What is pulling back on vaccine recommendations going to mean for the people of Kentucky?
Pulling back on vaccine recommendations is going to make living in the United States more dangerous for every single American. It's going to make it more dangerous for our kids to go to school or to come home and to see their grandparents. I mean, we're just 5 years removed from a pandemic that in Kentucky killed more people than World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and the Korean War put together, and it was a vaccine that got us out of it. RFK Jr. is not qualified, should not be that cabinet secretary. What he is doing is dangerous. This is an area where we need experts, and again, science is not red or blue, it's just science. That's why we teach it in school, and we need the actual experts that'll put it first.
Trump at
With Scribe.com, you can create documentation in minutes, not hours. Until now, it forever.
Mr. President, Mrs. Trump, it is with great pleasure that my wife and I welcome you to Windsor Castle on this, your second state visit to the United Kingdom. This unique and important occasion reflects the enduring bond between our two great nations, anchored by the deep friendship between our people. This relationship, which, with good reason, we and our predecessors have long called special, has made us safer and stronger through the generations. Our people have fought and died together for the values we hold dear. We have innovated, traded, and created together, fueling our economies and cultures through myriad forms of exchange. We have celebrated together, mourned together, and stood together in the best and worst of times. Mr. President, as we approach the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence next year, it is remarkable to think just how far we have come. I cannot help but wonder what our forebears from 1776 would make of this friendship today. The rebel commander and pioneering First President George Washington famously vowed never to set foot on British soil. And my 5 times great-grandfather, King George III, for his part, did not spare his words when he spoke of the revolutionary leaders. Today, however, we celebrate a relationship between our two countries that surely neither Washington nor King George III could possibly have imagined. The ocean may still divide us, but in so many other ways we are now the closest of kin. Mr. President, you have spoken of your pride in your British roots. In fact, not only have you set foot on British soil twice in the last 2 months alone, but I understand that British soil makes for rather splendid golf courses. Now, for my part, I have always admired the ingenuity of the American people and the principles of freedom which your great democracy has represented since its inception. Throughout my life, from the very first visit to the United States in 1970, and over 20 visits since that time, I have cherished close ties between the British and American people. In fact, had the media succeeded in the 90s in their own attempt at deepening the special relationship, I myself might have been married off within the Nixon family. Mr. President, from York to New York, from Birmingham, England to Birmingham, Alabama, we are united by a common language and shared heritage. The many thousands of people from each of our countries who have made the other their home have enriched our societies immeasurably, a fact that gives me the greatest pride. Our cultural connections, too, continue to flourish, with our actors, musicians, writers and television presenters prospering in the hearts of transatlantic audiences. Today, our alliance spans every field of endeavour and shows vast potential for growth. The United Kingdom was your partner in the first trade deal of your administration, Mr. President, bringing jobs and growth to both our countries. And no doubt we can go even further as we build this new era of our partnership. Our two nations have an exceptional legacy of shared discovery. Together we laid the foundations of nuclear science, mapped the human genome, and built.
Okay, so that's why they were talking about this, that, and the third, yada, yada, yada. And then, You know what I mean? And then let's go back to see what else that was happened today after Trump at the White House. There was a lot of drama happened. Jimmy Kimmel show got canceled today.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
We have breaking news. ABC has just announced here that they will be preempting the very well-known show Jimmy Kimmel Live indefinitely. That's confirmed by ABC, and it comes at a very tense time with many of the issues we've been covering tonight. There was a backlash on the right because Jimmy Kimmel, after the Charlie Kirk shooting, made the statement that he viewed, quote, new lows with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and with everything they can to score political points from it, end quote. I've just read part of what Jimmy Kimmel has said, which includes what sounds like an inaccurate reference to the shooter. We followed, of course, that case closely on this broadcast. Andrew Weissman, DOJ and FBI veteran, is here with me. And I kind of want to start with saying this is a pretty big piece of news when you look at the backlash or punishment of speech, something we've been covering. Also, I would say, in a news broadcast that were on ABC, you would be probably expected to issue corrections or deal with any material that, deliberately or not, over time became inaccurate, right? I don't know the exact date of that statement. I just wanted to let viewers know that. And the FCC under Donald Trump had also publicly called for this outcome. So there's been both public but specific government pressure. Your reaction to this news?
Well, one, it's worth taking a pause because we will learn more about exactly what the states are and sort of how this came about. When I hear this, I divide it very much as you said. What has the government done versus what has a private actor like ABC done? So first, with respect to the government, that's where it's exactly the conversation we were just having with Katie. The government needs to be really respectful of different viewpoints, even when you think that what is being said is inaccurate or deplorable, or both. And so that, to me, is the more problematic thing, where you want to know exactly what were they doing, because you really are not supposed to engage in sort of viewpoint discrimination. Now, a private actor is a very different story. A private actor is entitled to voice their opinion and what they have to say. But a company can also have certain, restrictions on what they do. But again, news organizations, they both have to be accurate. They have to be fair. They, as you know, from time to time will issue retractions and corrections. But also, news organizations should be the first to be defending the First Amendment.
Yes, and while we are just getting this is brand new, we know that Brendan Carr, the FCC chief, had talked about this and talked about potentially using government power and fines. He said they really should pull Kimmel. We've been covering what has been both the widespread condemnation of the terrible political violence connected to the Kirk shooting. At least the governor and others have discussed it in that manner. That case goes forward. But then you have the fact that Donald Trump has agitated against Jimmy Kimmel for years. Around the Colbert and that show, which the parent company said was a business financial decision, Trump darkly posted Kimmel is next. They have been feuding for years. So even for those who might be very justifiably concerned about any statement or statement about that violence or Kirk, how do you view this from the oversight perspective of whether or not this has to also be reviewed for whether the government was trying to do the political bidding of the president to get rid of a critic?
Yeah, well, look at CEG Lisa Cook, where that is exactly what she is saying, which is that she is being targeted so that he can control the Fed. I do think that it is important for the news to be able to cover whether somebody is politicizing a tragedy. And there may be a time and place for that discussion. It may not be appropriate to do right at the moment it is happening because it is a tragedy, and that it should maybe not be the first thing that you cover. But that is, if it is happening, that is something that does have to be covered. And so it really can't be that you are in government calling on sanctions because you simply don't want to be criticized. That is core to the First Amendment.
And to kind of narrow in on what you're saying, you're talking about what in the law would be a pretext, that you have a policy on after a critic for years, and then something else happens and is being used or misused. Again, the involvement today, very publicly, of the FCC, of the Federal Communications Commission, which has oversight of these broadcasting networks, that's supposed to be for things other than the president silencing critics, right? I mean, that's the FCC's official role.
So in terms of pretext, let's just take it back to your show tonight, where we started by talking about Kash Patel. There are many people who listened to that, I'm sure, who said, I think what he said was false. And some people may have thought it was deliberately false. So where is the government outcry over that? And so when you're seeing this as outcry over person A, but not person B, and person B happens to be, your ally, but person A is your enemy, this is not rocket science to know what is going on. And frankly, Donald Trump is very open about sort of weaponizing the levers of power.
I'm curious, both in your role as a lawyer, but also as an intelligent person around these worlds, what you think that the early big pressures have been on influential figures in entertainment. In Colbert, even though they stipulated it was for a different reason, but Trump was very, very vocal against him. And what looks to be tonight about Kimmel. What does that tell us?
So I'm going to tell you a very quick story. When I had lunch with my parents and I asked them about the McCarthy era, Joseph McCarthy,
sure.
And I said, compare that, living through that, and living through Trump 1.0. And they said that 1.0 was better because at least then there were people speaking up and you didn't feel alone, and that there was a real sense of the First Amendment and you weren't terrified, and it wasn't this idea of silencing. And that is the thing that we talked about on the show, and we've talked about it before, is that slipping into the use of fear and the levers of power to recapitulate a really hideous point in our history in the 1950s, with the Red Scare, and what was done to people in Hollywood, in academia, in government. And that is the concern, is that you're going to see that kind of silence that is being used through government power.
Wow. Let's hear people discuss that more.
If you live in Orlando, did you know that you can have permanent teeth in just 24 hours? That's right. Only 24 hours and your new smile is ready. And with affordable payment options, achieving your dream smile has never been easier. Forget waiting months with temporary teeth or those insanely uncomfortable dentures. Backed by over 20,000 five-star Google reviews and winners of the 2024 Dental Implant Restoration Company of the Year, Nuvia is helping people regain their smiles and change their lives. And the best part, it all happens in only 24 hours. Take the 60-second quiz now to find out if Nuvia dental implants are right for you.
You're not gonna believe what happened. Tell me everything. I'll show you on Monday.com. So I started the biggest initiative of the quarter. I did everything right. I used AI blocks to list all the tasks, delegate them to the team, set up all the timelines. It even wrote perfect descriptions, so everything was crystal clear. Clearly, you're a professional. Thank you. Suddenly, I get a message from leadership saying we need to finish a project a month before deadline. Happens every time. Good thing we have Monday.com. We just reshaped all the timeline, brought in freelancers to help, gave them some guest accounts. They had everything organized so they could just jump right in. We put up all the assets, waited for management to approve.
Trump administration is clearly on defense now over these proven attacks on free speech and confessions, admissions of improper motive by senior officials. New York Times reporting there are now these measures to silence opponents that the White House wants to pursue that would be un-American, full stop, but probably unconstitutional. We will see exactly what they try to do. But then Trump is pursuing them by invoking Kirk's killing. Tonight, there are clues about a new order Trump may push that would try to curb free speech. So this anti-speech agenda continues even as AG Bondi backtracked after admitting what I just mentioned, an unconstitutional goal of the government targeting free speech because they deem it offensive or they deem it hate speech. It's been a theme across the administration.
We will absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything, and that's across the aisle.
We probably go after people like you because you treat me so unfairly. It's hate. You have a lot of hate in your heart.
To the extent that it's part of an organized effort to inflict harm and terror and damage to the United States, there's potential investigations there.
You just heard from the AG, the deputy AG, and the president. Two of those three people described illegal or unlawful goals for the government targeting speech. The final one you'll notice was worded more carefully, a reference to speech that might actually lead to violence. And if you get up to violence or right near it, as I'll explain, then yes, that's different. But Bondi was facing fact checks and a backlash from really all sides of the spectrum over her completely wrong claim that I just played for you. Murdoch's Wall Street Journal hitting a point we actually reported when we first heard Bondi's remarks, that she has now failed her First Amendment test in public, flat on her face. Now, that's also bad because this is the person who's supposed to uphold the First Amendment and the rest of the Constitution as the leader of the Justice Department. I'll read to you from the Journal. She doesn't have a basic understanding of the First Amendment. It protects words of speech, including expressions of hate, which are despicable, but not legal cause for prosecution. Trump allies also now calling for a kind of speech punishment regime. They're asking companies to fire people who have said things they don't like about Mr. Kirk or others during this tough time. And while some of those things are completely terrible, we are witnessing, adjacent to what the government's doing, a kind of right-wing cancel culture run amok. And a contradiction of same people, same MAGA leaders and pundits' complaints about what they called woke or supposedly liberal cancel culture. Now, I told you I'd tell you how this works under the law, not anyone's opinion. Here it is. The Supreme Court ruled in 1989. We made that a year really large. You can see how long this stuff has been clearly established. It's a bedrock principle of the First Amendment. The government may not prohibit speech simply because it's offensive or disagreeable. That applies to most things that people would call hate speech. This is long settled. I'm going to take you back a little further really quick, back to the late 60s, when there were also serious tensions over politics of violence. Real problems in the country. Back then in 69, the Supreme Court noted that speech and peaceful words are protected all the way up to the line until speech that implies and incites and gets really into causing violence or lawless action. They called it imminent lawless action. If you know how lawyers are, I got Weissman standing by. That word imminent has a lot of work because talking about something that might be lawless next year is very different from trying to get someone to break the law right in front of you. For example, words designed to cause violence this very moment, or words designed to cause fraud this very moment. So these exceptions that I'm telling you about to free speech, they are narrow. They have been established for some time. As for the current court, Justice Sotomayor weighing in on this topic. Now, being very respectful, she's not naming names, but she refers, see if you can hear the Pam Bondi call out, she refers to lawyers who should know better, suggesting that there is a competence failure for any lawyer, which includes recent Bondi, who is pushing for jailing people for their constitutionally protected speech.
Kamala Harris is a fascist.
When your severe asthma says you can't, Tespire says you can. Tespire is an add-on treatment for people 12 and over.
Did you ever tell?
The thing that gets to me is every time I listen to a lawyer-trained representative saying we should criminalize free speech in some way, I think to myself, that law school failed.
That law school failed. That lawyer failed. And what if that lawyer does know better, but is still just saying the opposite of what the First Amendment holds? because they want a DOJ that breaks the law or punishes for speech, or they want to please their boss. That's the pushback. As we've noted, Bondi has backtracked, which is a sign of awareness that she's either in too much trouble or she got it wrong. But the president is not backtracking. That order I mentioned refers to political violence, but also is involved in efforts to go after people based on their viewpoints, which the First Amendment also protects. For example, trying to yank the legally justified tax-exempt status of groups because they're liberal nonprofits, or using anti-corruption laws specifically to target people based on their views or organization. Of course, you want the government to be against all corruption, but you don't want it to misuse that to chill or silence speech. Without the First Amendment, well, I couldn't be telling you this, and you couldn't be shouting back. You're welcome to disagree or add to anything that's being said in your media, but it is fundamentally what makes
Today we heard from the former director of the CC for the first time since she was fired, just 29 days after being confirmed by the Senate. Susan Menarez, who was chosen and nominated by Donald Trump, testified before the Senate Health Committee about how she was fired for, quote, holding the line on scientific integrity, telling senators about the meeting with Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. that ultimately led to her dismissal.
On the morning of August 25th, Secretary Kennedy demanded two things of me that were inconsistent with my oath of office and the ethics required of a public official. He directed me to commit in advance to approving every ACIP recommendation, regardless of the scientific evidence. He also directed me to dismiss career officials responsible for vaccine policy without cause. He said if I was unwilling to do both, I should resign. I responded that I could not pre-approve recommendations without reviewing the evidence, and I had no basis to fire scientific experts. He told me he had already spoken with the White House several times about having me removed. I told the secretary that if he believed he could not trust me, he could fire me. The next day, I was told I still had my job, but the secretary's expectations remained: approval of ACIP recommendations and dismissal of career scientists. I would not commit to that, and I believe it is the true reason I was fired.
Senator,
I think what really makes Picasso special to our customers is the actual ownership.
Bernie Sanders, independent from Vermont, is a ranking member of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, which held today's hearing, and he joins me now. Senator, I knew the outlines of this story. Of course, we covered it. It was reported. I found the testimony today truly shocking. What Ms. Menarez detailed. What was your reaction?
Well, I think it was shocking, and I think two major issues popped out at me, Chris. Number one was the ferocity upon which the Kennedy people are prepared to undermine the
Il fait voler tout pour qu'il laisse les gloire face au nom de l'Éternel fort et puissant dans le combat. Jésus m'était campé dans la maison, campé dans la maison, campé dans le génération, campé dans le génération. Habillé, c'est pas d'accord, c'est pas accepté, Jésus me calme, Jésus me la vie, Jésus me l'ami, Jésus me calme, me la vie sauvé, Seigneur, l'Éternel, me calme dans mes me calme dans mon, et t'as pas de pas ça, comme tu comment on fait porter sur sa calme, allez voir, où c'est amour éternel, amour éternel, amour éternel, l'éternel amour, le sang de Jésus, Le sang de Jésus, biou. 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 Sur le corps éternel, pour laisser nous selon nous. Et en gratitude, c'est leur contre nous. Pour les 10 ans, si j'ai respiré les dieux, mais tu parles éternel, sauvez-nous, mon Dieu. Tu vas pas ajouter les ennemis, tu brises de les méchants, le salut tout près de l'éternel, le la bénédiction, oh, sous Cali, oh, sous maison, et sous Corée, puis ça. L'éternel, juste vient faire des affaires, travail dans mes pluies. Les mots qui volent là, c'est intervention. All
right, guys, I'm out of here. Thank you. Deuces.